I need you to hear this. I need you to really hear it. Nothing grows fast. Not the things that last. Not the things that matter. Not the things worth having. The tree you're sitting under right now, that thing took 40 years to become what it is. You didn't plant it. You didn't water it. You didn't watch it grow. You just showed up and enjoyed the shade. That's how it works. Somebody put in decades of invisible, thankless work, and then one day, somebody else got to benefit from it. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. The question is whether you're going to be the person who plants the tree or the person who keeps looking for a tree that's already grown. You want it now. I get it. We all want it now. But wanting it now doesn't change the laws of how things work. You can want the harvest all you like. You still have to plant the seed. You still have to water the ground. You still have to wait through the whole season, sometimes multiple seasons before anything comes up. And while you're waiting, the ground looks empty. While you're waiting, it looks like nothing is happening. But something is happening. It's happening underground, where you can't see it, where nobody can see it, where there's no applause and no validation and no proof that any of it is working. That's where the real growth lives. That's where everything real starts. This is the conversation nobody wants to have, because it doesn't feel good to hear. It doesn't go viral. It doesn't get a million likes, but it is the truth. The most important truth there is about building anything real with your life. Nothing happens fast. It takes time. And if you can't make peace with that, if you can't learn to keep going when there's nothing to show for it, yet you are going to quit right before everything you've been building finally breaks through the surface. Every single person who has ever built something real, something that lasted, something worth talking about, every single one of them went through a period where it looked like nothing was happening. A long period, not a week, not a month, years, sometimes a decade, sometimes more. And during that time, the people around them were questioning them. The people who loved them were worried about them. And they themselves were having moments, private moments, in the dark, alone, where they weren't sure either, where they thought maybe everyone else was right, maybe this isn't going to work, maybe I've wasted all this time. You want to know something? That moment, that exact moment of doubt, that season of silence where nothing seems to be moving, that is not the sign that it's not working. That is the sign that you are in the middle of the process. That is the price. That is what it costs. Every person who ever came out the other side and built something extraordinary paid that price. Every single one. And the ones who didn't make it, the ones who gave up right before the breakthrough, they paid the same price. They put in the same years. They suffered through the same silence. They just didn't stay long enough to collect what they had earned. They quit in year 4 of a 5-year process. They stopped watering on the last season before the harvest. And they walked away convinced it wasn't going to happen, when in reality, they were 6 months from everything changing. Don't be that person. Do not be that person. I know what it feels like to work and work and work and see nothing come back. I know what it feels like to look around you and watch people who seem to be doing less, trying less, caring less, and somehow they're moving forward. Somehow things are happening for them. And you're standing there, grinding every day, and nothing is shifting. And it makes you angry, and it makes you want to stop. Because what's the point of doing all this if nothing is happening? What's the point of being disciplined if discipline isn't producing results you can see? The results are there. They're just not visible yet. Everything you've been doing every day, you chose to show up when you didn't feel like it. Every time you did the right thing when nobody was watching. Every skill you built. Every lesson you learned by failing. Every small step forward that felt like nothing at the time, all of it is accumulating. It's compounding, like interest in a bank account you can't see yet. 1% better every day doesn't feel like anything for a long time. But after a year, you're 37% better. After 3 years, you are a fundamentally different person. After 5 years, people who haven't seen you in a while won't recognize what you've become. Not because of one dramatic thing you did. Because of 10,000 small things you kept doing when nobody was watching and nothing was confirming you were on the right track. Let me tell you about the bamboo tree. Because this is maybe the most honest story about how growth actually works. You plant the seed, you water it, you fertilize it. You take care of the ground it's in, and for the first year nothing. Not a sprout, not a hint. The ground looks exactly the same as the day you planted. Second year, same thing. You're watering dead-looking soil. People are walking past you asking why you're out here every day watering dirt. Third year, nothing. Fourth year, nothing. And you start to seriously question everything. You start to wonder if maybe the seed was bad, if maybe you've been doing it wrong, if maybe it's just not going to happen. Then in the fifth year, in 6 weeks, the bamboo tree grows 90 feet. 90 feet, 6 weeks. Was it growing the whole time? Of course it was. The entire time you were watering what looked like nothing. The root system was going deeper. It was building the foundation that the 90 feet of height would need to stand on. It couldn't grow up until it had finished growing down. And nobody gives you a trophy for the years of growth nobody can see. Nobody cheers for the root system. Nobody congratulates you on how deep your foundation is going. But without those years of invisible work, the 90 feet isn't possible. The visible breakthrough only happens because of the invisible process. Every time. And here's what kills people. Here's what ends careers before they begin. What destroys potential before it can become something real. In year 2, sometimes even year 1, people stop watering the bamboo. They stop because the soil still looks the same, because there's no evidence that anything is working, because they can't feel the roots going deeper, and because they've been told their whole lives that results are supposed to be visible and fast and confirmable. We live in a world now where you can watch a video get 1 million views in 48 hours. You can see a business go from $0 to $1 billion in 3 years. You see these things and your brain starts to believe that's how growth works, that speed is normal, that if things aren't moving visibly and fast, something must be wrong. But those stories, those overnight explosions, they are the exception. And even then, even for those people, when you actually look at the story underneath the story they were building for 10 years before the thing took off in 3, the overnight success is almost always a decade of groundwork compressed into a headline. The bamboo was still in the ground. They were still watering it. You just weren't watching yet. The hardest part of any real goal isn't starting. Everybody can start. You can start anything. Starting feels good. Starting has energy and excitement and possibility around it. The hardest part is the middle, the long middle. The stretch of the road where the excitement of the beginning has worn off, and the finish line is still nowhere in sight, and you just have to keep going, not because it feels right, but because you decided to. Because you made a commitment. Because you understood, or you're in the process of understanding, that the middle is where the real work happens. The beginning is where you set the direction. The end is where you collect the result. But the middle, the long, grey, unglamorous, nobody's clapping middle, that's where you actually become the person who deserves what you're working toward. That's the thing most people don't talk about. You don't just need to survive the middle, you need to use it. You need to understand that the middle is not an obstacle to your goal. The middle is the mechanism. The middle is what builds you into something different, something stronger, something capable of actually holding the thing you're trying to build. Because here's what happens to people who get the result too fast before they've gone through the middle properly. They can't keep it. They didn't become the person who knows how to sustain it. They didn't build the habits, the character, the depth of understanding that comes from the slow grind. So they get it, and then they lose it. Or they get it, and they're miserable because they don't know who they are without the chase. The middle isn't the punishment for wanting something great. The middle is the training. You think champions are people who got there fast. You think the people you look up to, the ones who seem to be operating at a different level from everyone else, you think they got there because something happened quickly for them. Look at the actual story. Not the highlight reel. The actual story. Kobe Bryant was in the gym at 4 in the morning. Not once. Not when the cameras were there. Every single day for 20 years. By the time most people were just waking up, Kobe had already put in 2 hours of work. You do that for 20 years, do the math. The gap that creates between you and everyone else isn't supernatural. It's arithmetic. It's time. It's the compounding of daily effort over years and years until the result looks like genius from the outside. He didn't become one of the greatest players who ever lived because of one incredible moment. He became that because of thousands of invisible mornings, thousands of shots in an empty gym, thousands of repetitions of the fundamentals when he'd already mastered the fundamentals, repetition on top of mastery, on top of more repetition. That's not inspiration, that's patience. That's an obsessive, committed, non-negotiable relationship with time and process that most people are not willing to have, because most people want to know how long it takes, and the answer is longer than you want, and then most people stop. I'm going to say something that is going to be uncomfortable, because the comfortable version of this conversation isn't going to help you. The comfortable version is, keep going, it'll happen, believe in yourself, your time is coming, and that's true, but it's not complete. The complete version is this: most people who don't get what they want don't fail because they lack talent. They don't fail because the opportunity wasn't there. They fail because they couldn't tolerate the time it takes. They couldn't sit in the uncertainty long enough. They couldn't keep showing up when there was no proof that showing up was working, and so they stopped. And they told themselves a story about why it wasn't possible, and that story protected them from having to admit the real thing, which was this: I gave up too early. I didn't have enough patience for the process. Patience is not passive. I need you to understand that. Patience is not sitting on your hands and waiting for something to fall into your lap. That's not patience. That's laziness with a better name. Real patience is aggressive. Real patience is showing up every single day and doing the work with complete commitment and simultaneously accepting that the outcome is on its own timeline. Real patience is trusting the process when the process gives you nothing back. Real patience is the hardest thing there is. It is far harder than working hard. Plenty of people can work hard for a month. Far fewer can work hard for 3 years while nothing visible happens, and the people around them are questioning their choices, and the voice inside their head is wondering if they've made a massive mistake. That's the real test. Not whether you can grind, whether you can grind in silence, whether you can do the work without the reward, whether you can water the bamboo when the ground still looks like dirt, whether you can stay the course when every signal in your environment is telling you to quit, to pivot, to try something else, to be realistic, to grow up, to give up. Can you do that? Can you really do that? Because if you can genuinely commit to staying in the process long enough for the process to work, there is almost nothing that can stop you. Not talent, not connections, not money, not luck. Time and consistency in the hands of a person who refuses to quit are the most powerful forces in the world. They are not glamorous, they are not exciting, but they work. They always work. They have never not worked. Here's something that will change the way you think about all of this. The goal isn't the destination. I know you've heard that before. I know it sounds like something you'd see on a poster, but sit with it for a second and think about what it actually means. If the goal is the destination, then every single day you spend in the middle, every day you haven't arrived yet, is a bad day, is a failure, is a reminder of how far you still are from where you want to be, and that is a brutal way to live. That is a way of living that will break you. That will make the middle unbearable. That will guarantee you quit before you get there. But if you understand that the goal is the person you're becoming, if you understand that what you're really after is the version of yourself that exists on the other side of all this work, the character that gets forged in the fire of the long process, then every day in the middle is progress. Every single day you show up as a win. Every day you did the thing you said you were going to do, regardless of whether anything visible happened, is a day that shaped you into the person who eventually gets the outcome. The process is the point. The work is the reward. Not just the result of the work itself. I know someone who spent 7 years building a business that nobody around him believed in. 7 years. He was working a regular job during the day, building his own thing at night and on weekends. For 7 years, he had nothing to show externally. No big revenue, no press, no social media success story. His family thought he was wasting his time. His friends stopped asking about it because they assumed it hadn't worked out and they didn't want to embarrass him. He ate the same cheap food for years. He didn't take vacations. He didn't buy new things. He just kept building. Not because it was working in an obvious way, because he could feel, deep down, that he was getting better, that the work was working on him. that every year he was a sharper, more capable, more knowledgeable version of himself. And in year 8, everything changed. Not because of luck. Because in year 8, he was finally the person who was ready to receive what he'd been building toward. In year 1, even if success had shown up, he wouldn't have known what to do with it. The 7 years didn't just build the business. They built him into someone who could sustain it. That is how it works. That is always how it works. Stop comparing your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20. This is one of the most destructive things you can do to your own progress. You see someone who is already where you want to be. You see the result of their years, their skill, their success, their ease, the way they move through their craft, like it's effortless, and you compare that to where you are right now. In the beginning, when everything is hard and slow, and you're still making the mistakes they made 15 years ago, and you feel behind, you feel like you're failing. You feel like maybe you don't have what it takes. But you're not reading the same chapter. You're not even reading the same book. Their story started before yours. The page you're on right now, they were on that page years ago, and they felt exactly the way you feel. Exactly. They were slow. They were uncertain. They were making mistakes. They were wondering if it was going to happen. The difference is they kept going. And now they're 20 chapters ahead of you. And from 20 chapters ahead, the early chapters look effortless. The early chapters get compressed into a single line in an interview. Yeah, it was tough in the beginning. That's it. 20 chapters of grinding compressed into one sentence. And you took that one sentence and compared it to your 20 chapters, and you decided you were failing. You are not failing. You are on chapter 3, and the only job of chapter 3 is to get to chapter 4. That's it. Your only job right now is to stay in the story. Keep writing the chapters. Keep doing the work of this particular season you're in. Because the person you become by the time you get to chapter 20, that person is completely unrecognizable from where you are right now. Unrecognizable. And that's not discouraging. That's extraordinary. You get to become something completely different from what you are today, but only if you stay in the story long enough for the transformation to happen. Comparison is a thief. It steals your presence. It takes you out of the work of your own chapter and puts you in the misery of someone else's highlight reel. Every second you spend looking sideways at someone else's progress is a second you're not pouring into your own. Close the tab. Put the phone down. Get back to your lane. Get back to your chapter. Run your own race. And I'll tell you something else about comparison that nobody talks about. The people you're comparing yourself to, the ones who seem to have it all figured out, the ones whose progress looks clean and linear and fast, they are comparing themselves to someone else too. They are looking at somebody ahead of them and feeling exactly what you feel when you look at them. Everybody is someone else's chapter 20, and everybody is struggling through their own middle chapter at the same time. The person 3 levels above you is grinding just as hard as you are. The person 10 levels above them is doing the same. It never stops. The climb never gets easy. You just get better at climbing. And you only get better at climbing, by staying in the mountain. By not coming down just because the altitude is uncomfortable and the summit isn't visible yet. The people who make it, the ones who actually get to the places they were trying to reach, they share one thing more than anything else. More than talent, more than intelligence, more than connections or luck or perfect timing. They share the ability to stay committed to their process without needing constant external proof that the process is working. They learn to trust the invisible. They learn to be okay in the in-between. They learn that the gap between planting and